So hello and welcome to the next in our series of interviews for The Rate of a Chip. Today we're interviewing the Artistic Director of the Everyman Theatre, Julie Kelleher. So I'm just going to start with it. How's it going? First off, how are you getting on?
Thank you.
The first question we have here is, what is your experience of working in a found space?
So the first time I guess I worked in found space, I didn't find it, was on my internship between second and third year of college with Carpet. So I was working as a performer on a devised piece of work that Ciaran was directing.
Oh nice.
So where is it? It's at the it's where TK Maxx and 58 degrees north is.
Okay.
So you know when you're on Paul Street at the back of Waterstones and you go through there, so the back of that building, it's really beautiful actually, old building that had a barrel vaulted ceiling but that was completely covered over with like kind of off it, you know, that like suspended ceiling kind of tiled thingo. So you were able to climb up to the top and see the barrel vaulted ceiling. So we spent and there was a few different levels. There was stairs, I think, and there's certainly pictures of that. So we spent like the first 2 days in the space basically cleaning up like pigeon shit and just kind of acquainting ourselves with all of its nooks and crannies and that kind of stuff. So it was kind of an amazing introduction to working that way actually.
Yeah.
Because Carpet are kind of the masters of that, I guess. So really there was a bunch of actors. There was maybe about 8 or 9 of us who were either still in training or just out of training. So we just spent, I guess, about 3 or 4 weeks knocking around the space, you know, devising material as we went along. The show was called Love, so that was loosely, like all of the sketches or kind of little vignettes that we made were loosely themed around that. But we had a set designer that we worked with who was David Dunnigan, and he built things like, you know, I remember one day going, I think we should have a swing in this space, and so David built us a swing, which was amazing. He built kind of a 10-foot tall bed and kind of you know, it was quite absurd or surreal maybe in style, and because it was all vignettes, you know, they were just kind of like loosely threaded together, so people promenaded through the space and then various moments and things would pop up. So that was my first experience. It was kind of a brilliant introduction to the challenges of working in a space that's you know, not built for that at all, both as an actor and as a maker. So yeah, that was an amazing experience.
Very good. I suppose that kind of segues into our next question, which would be, what would you say the kind of differences are from working in a found space to working in a more traditional space? Like, what are the challenges, the kind of possible advantages that can be gained by that?
Well, so there's multiple technical ones, obviously, because if the space isn't made, you have to sort of install anything theatrical that you need, like lights. You know, if you're doing things at Midsummer, which Carpet often are, it's challenging to tech a thing because it means you can't really tech until after 10:30 in the evening because you don't have darkness, especially if you're either outdoors or if you've got a space that has large windows, for example, the space in the case of Love had. And I remember having to do things like, you know, we had to take the steps ourselves, like, you know, like not to make the building safe for people to come into it, and whatever, install sound, all that kind of stuff. So that's technically challenging. It's also financially challenging, depending on, I suppose, the scale of your ambition that wise. And I suppose the ideal scenario is that you're rehearsing and making, if it's a new piece that you're rehearsing and making in the space, so that's not always possible. A number of years later, I had the misfortune or good fortune, I'm not sure which, to work on a brilliant production of Macbeth in Dublin. It was at this time of year, and the space, even though it's a formal space now, it wasn't a formal space then. It was in Smock Alley, and the building has been there since Viking times. There's these really old walls, and the room we were working in basically had an earth floor and 3 walls that were listed that we weren't able to fix anything to, and so we had to make it into a theatre. So I was a producer on that, and it was really challenging because we had to get a rake in there, and also we had budgeted for the company to rehearse in a rehearsal space for week 1 and then spend the rest of the rehearsal process in the space. It was February, and this was the room was actually below sea level. It was kind of effectively a dungeon, and it was punishing for the actors and for everybody involved. We had to, you know, we didn't have a whole pile of money for that show, or at least there wasn't a huge room for, you know, it wasn't very flexible, you know, everything was allocated. So, you know, I remember trying to hire massive blow heaters to try and heat the room, but of course you can't rehearse while those are running, so like they would spend 10 minutes like blasting these, and not like convection heaters, massive things like this size, try and warm everybody up for 10 minutes before they went back into it. They were too loud to rehearse over. So there's all that kind of those kinds of challenges, I guess, that I've seen over the years, making work in that way. And then from a performer's point of view, you know, often the rooms or buildings that you're working in. So I've performed in everything from like really small pub spaces to like massive rooms. Like I did another show with Kirkcaldy the following year after Love, that was in, I think it was like the kind of wash plant section of Ford's buildings down in Marina Commercial Park. So this was like a huge warehouse basically that was like a hangar, like enormous. And they built several stages inside it. And so the action kind of migrated from stage to stage, and the audience were all kind of clumped in the centre, so they just had to kind of turn around. But the biggest challenge for that is just vocally being able to produce enough sound, you know, safely, so that you can sustain the run in that space. And so I've seen that time and again, you know. And then of course when you're in a much smaller space, to be able to modulate that much more, you know, because often none of these rooms or spaces are built for to carry sound. But like, you know, if you were outdoors and in a purpose-built amphitheatre, you might have some hope, but frequently you're not. So that's really challenging for, especially for people who don't have maybe adequate vocal training to know what the kind of techniques and processes to kind of, you know, mind that.
Yeah, and I suppose the difference part of the process then too is to develop your voice in that way.
Yeah,
to be able to,
and it's a challenging thing as well, you know, from a performance point of view, to try and find something, a level that feels truthful while also like roaring your head off, because your audience, you know, the person who's at the back of the audience might be, you know, some hundreds of yards away from you. So that's the other major challenge as far as I can see, performance wise. And then, you know, there's all sorts of mad things like, you know, having to do costume changes while just behind everyone's back as opposed to like backstage and that kind of stuff, you know. But I think that's all the crack of it.
I think it can be an interesting
and
experience.
we had the experience of doing a show in Millennium Hall in City Hall in June, like, so it's a beautiful room, like, you know, huge, really high ceiling. But sure, it was like, it has a glass ceiling, like, so it was like being in a sweatbox, like, basically for everybody, like, during rehearsals and in the thing. So that, you know, all those kinds of things bring their own challenges.
Yeah, I know.
So, and we did that. I was on another Kirkcaldy show in 2010. That was in the Savoy. And that, you know, so it was dark. So there was one of those issues, right? It was dark, it was great, delighted with life. But it was so hot that summer that we had constantly, and Piece of Promenade as well, that we had people like literally dropping like flies during the course of the show, like audience members, because of the heat, and we weren't really able to manage it, because if you put the air conditioning on, then the performers can't be heard in the space. So anyway, that's all the fun games.
Loads of, exactly. It's definitely some interesting challenges we faced. And so then, just moving on to our next question, what is your experience of working with tragedy?
God, that feels very lofty as a concept. I mean, so the show I was just talking about in Millennium Hall and City Hall was the Scarlet Letter, so I suppose that's probably the closest I've come to working with tragedy. Though I'm maybe dancing at Eunice I would count, but tragedy in the sense of like the Shakespearean or Greek where like everyone dies at the end, you know, I have maybe limited enough experience of that. A lot of people die at the end of the Scarlet Letter, I guess, or the kind of main characters die at the end of it. So it maybe wouldn't be my métier, I suppose. I rather things a little bit jollier.
Yeah,
maybe.
very good.
But I enjoy sort of watching it. I mean, I don't know. I suppose it's a question of what we mean maybe in the modern sense of the word, you know. Making something like Asking for It felt like a very tragic, you know, piece of work. Like,
definitely, and I suppose that is kind of sort of direction which we're going with tragedy. So like the way the ship would be structured as a tragedy, and like what would you feel is, like when you're talking about Asking for It there, or tragedy in a modern context, or the importance of tragedy in modern times. Because obviously it's like historically important. And what do you feel like the relevance is of it?
I suppose maybe it is quite similar in that there's some sort of like moral lesson or sort of some didacticism about like, you know, why everything is so sad or what, you know, what there is to be learned by everybody's paid, and that definitely exists in something like the Scarlet Letter or in Asking for It, which both sort of share themes around, you know, women being persecuted and, you know, sort of feminist, I suppose, themes in that sense. For me, the sort of great tragedy of Asking for It isn't actually so the girl at the centre of the story is gang raped, but almost the kind of worst tragedy is later on in the story when her family you know, really sort of collapse under the pressure of a year of waiting for the justice system to kind of deal with it, and the kind of maybe the pressure coming from the local community and that kind of thing, to the point where she's asked again by her family to submit to that pressure, to other people's pressure, so other people really find it challenging to bear her pain and to kind of bear witness to her pain. And so the real tragedy of it is that she's asked to do something that she doesn't want to do again for a second time in a sort of much bigger, you know, it's much more insidious, it's much more it's much less sort of violent overtly, I guess, but it's the deeply, you know, tragic thing about that play, you know. So I guess there's maybe that's a much more nuanced thing than like, you know, like than a body littered with stage littered with bodies at the end, you know what I mean? And sort of people go on, but like, you know, but there's real pain and tragedy in their existence, I guess. So I think there's definitely still plenty of space for that on the modern stage at least, and I think that's the space where we can, like, that's where theatre has real value, I think, still, because I don't know, like watching the show, you know, I watched it numerous times and we had it last year, you know, you can really feel people's sort of reaction, you know, there's a sense of the room being very held, you know, almost suspended in the kind of being captivated by the thing that was happening on stage, you know, and so that, for me, that's theatre, you know, when we're all held in the same moment, you know, and it's community and it's sort of ritual almost in it. You know, because we're really listening, we're really paying attention, and we're doing that together, and we're thinking about that stuff together, you know. It's like that Tom Murphy quote, you know, from the Julie concerts, like, you know, the kind of miraculous thing of us all sort of being alive at the same moment. So I think you can have that in comedy as well as tragedy, but I think that for me was a really great example of how that's possible. And it really, even though it was the show was so sad, it made me cry all the time watching it. Like, I took great solace in that feeling that you know, people were really captivated in that way.
Very good. Yeah, that's good. And so that's Julie Kelleher, and thanks a lot for talking to us.
My pleasure.
And we look forward to seeing you on Monday. And thanks a lot.